The bustling city streets were alive with the hum of activity, but Marcus barely noticed. As the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company, he was used to the chaos. His mind was preoccupied with an upcoming board meeting as his chauffeur-driven car slowed to a stop at a red light. That's when he saw her. A woman, her face weathered but kind, sat on the sidewalk with two small children huddled close to her. She held a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps. God bless." Her eyes were downcast, but there was something familiar about her. Marcus leaned forward, squinting through the tinted window. His heart skipped a beat. "Stop the car," he ordered abruptly. The driver pulled over, and Marcus stepped out, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. He approached the woman cautiously, his designer shoes clicking against the pavement. When she looked up, her eyes widened in recognition. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice trembling. It was Clara, his high school sweetheart. The woman he'd once dreamed of spending his life with. But that was before life took them in wildly different directions. "Clara," he said, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "What happened to you?" Tears filled her eyes as she glanced at the children clinging to her. "It's a long story," she said, her voice breaking. "I lost my job, then my home. I've been trying to keep us afloat, but..." Marcus didn't let her finish. He knelt beside her, ignoring the dirt and grime. "You don't have to explain. Let me help you." The children, a boy and a girl, looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. The boy, no older than 6, clutched a tattered stuffed bear, while the girl, perhaps 4, hid shyly behind her mother. Marcus felt a pang in his chest. He couldn't imagine what they had been through, but he knew he couldn't just walk away. "Come with me," he said, standing and offering Clara his hand. She hesitated, glancing down at her children and then back at him. "Marcus, I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," he said firmly. "You never could be." With a shaky breath, Clara took his hand, and he helped her to her feet. The children followed, their small hands gripping their mother's worn coat. Marcus led them to his car, where the driver stood holding the door open. As they settled into the plush seats, Clara looked around in awe. The car was unlike anything she had ever been in before, with its sleek leather interior and the faint scent of luxury. The children, wide-eyed and silent, huddled close to her, their small bodies tense with uncertainty. Marcus sat across from them, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "First things first," he said. "Let's get you all cleaned up and some food in your stomachs. Then we'll figure out the rest." Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said gently. "Just let me help." The car pulled up to a luxury hotel, its grand entrance gleaming under the afternoon sun. Marcus stepped out first, offering his hand to Clara and then helping the children out of the car. The hotel staff, accustomed to his presence, greeted him with polite nods, though their eyes flickered with curiosity at the sight of his companions. Inside, Marcus led them to the front desk. "I need a suite for my friends," he said to the receptionist. "The best you have." The receptionist, a young woman with a professional smile, nodded and quickly made the arrangements. Within minutes, they were escorted to a spacious suite on the top floor, its windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Clara and the children stood in the doorway, their eyes wide with disbelief. The room was immaculate, with plush carpets, elegant furniture, and a large dining table set with a spread of food. The children, their fear momentarily forgotten, darted inside, their laughter echoing through the room as they explored their new surroundings. Marcus watched them with a small smile, his heart aching at the sight of their joy. He turned to Clara, who was still standing in the doorway, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "This is too much," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't accept this." "You can," Marcus said firmly. "And you will. You and your children deserve a safe place to stay, even if it's just for a little while." Clara looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something he couldn't quite place. "Marcus, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said gently. "Just take care of yourself and the kids. We'll figure out the rest later." As Clara and the children settled into the suite, Marcus made a few phone calls. He arranged for a doctor to come and check on them, ensuring they were healthy and had everything they needed. He also contacted his personal assistant, instructing her to gather clothes, toys, and other essentials for the children. By the time he returned to the suite, Clara and the children were sitting at the dining table, eating quietly. The children, their faces now clean and their hair brushed, looked like different kids altogether. Clara, too, seemed more at ease, though the weight of her struggles still lingered in her eyes. Marcus sat down across from them, his expression serious. Clara, I need to know what happened. How did you end up on the streets? Clara sighed, setting down her fork. It's a long story, she said, her voice heavy with emotion. After high school, I moved away. I met someone, and we got married. For a while, things were good. We had these 2 beautiful kids, and I thought we were happy. But then he lost his job, and things started to fall apart. He started drinking, and it got worse from there. She paused, her hands trembling as she reached for her glass of water. One day, he just left. He walked out and never came back. I tried to keep things together, but without his income, I couldn't pay the rent. We were evicted, and I couldn't find a job that paid enough to support us. We've been on the streets for almost a year now. Marcus listened in silence, his heart breaking for her. He had known Clara as a vibrant, ambitious young woman, full of dreams and determination. To see her reduced to this, it was almost too much to bear. Clara, he said, his voice soft but firm. You're not alone anymore. I'm going to help you get back on your feet. You and the kids deserve a better life, and I'm going to make sure you have it. Clara looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. Marcus, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, he said gently. Just let me help. As the evening wore on, Marcus stayed with them, making sure they were comfortable and had everything they needed. He played with the children, their laughter filling the room and bringing a sense of warmth and joy that had been missing for far too long. When it was time for him to leave, Clara walked him to the door. Marcus, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but, thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance. Marcus smiled, his eyes filled with determination. This is just the beginning, Clara. I promise you, things are going to get better. And as he walked away, he knew he would do whatever it took to keep that promise. The next day, the city was abuzz with the news. Marcus had not only taken Clara and her children off the streets but had also arranged for them to stay in a luxury hotel suite while he worked on a more permanent solution. Social media exploded with photos of the unlikely reunion, and reporters clamored for details. But Marcus wasn't done. At a press conference, he announced the launch of a new initiative, a foundation dedicated to helping single parents and families in crisis. He named it Clara's Hope, in honor of the woman who had once been his everything. This isn't just about Clara, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. It's about recognizing that anyone can fall on hard times. It's about giving people a second chance. Clara, standing beside him, wiped away tears as the crowd erupted in applause. Her children, now clean and dressed in new clothes, clung to her, their faces filled with hope for the first time in months. Marcus's actions left everyone shocked, not just because of his generosity, but because of the humility and compassion he showed. In a world often driven by greed and ambition, he reminded people that kindness could change lives. As the cameras flashed and the crowd cheered, Clara reached for Marcus's hand. Thank you, she whispered. He smiled, squeezing her hand gently. Thank you for reminding me what really matters. And in that moment, it was clear, sometimes, the most unexpected encounters could lead to the most profound transformations. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus's foundation, Clara's Hope, quickly gained traction, with donations pouring in from all corners of the city. People were inspired by his story, and many wanted to be part of the movement to help those in need. For Clara and her children, life began to change in ways they could hardly believe. Marcus had arranged for them to move into a modest but comfortable apartment, fully furnished and stocked with everything they needed. He also enrolled the children in a nearby school, ensuring they had access to the education they had been missing. Clara, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, struggled to adjust. She had spent so long in survival mode that the idea of stability felt foreign to her. But Marcus was there every step of the way, offering support and encouragement. You've been through so much, he said one evening as they sat in her new living room, the children playing quietly in the next room. But you're stronger than you realize. You just need to give yourself time to heal. Clara nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. I don't know how I'll ever repay you, Marcus. You've given us so much. You don't have to repay me, he said gently. Just focus on rebuilding your life. That's all I want for you. As the weeks passed, Clara began to find her footing. With Marcus's help, She enrolled in a job training program, learning new skills that would help her secure stable employment. She also started attending counseling sessions, working through the trauma of her past and finding ways to move forward. The children, too, began to thrive. For the first time in their young lives, they had a sense of stability and security. They made friends at school, joined extracurricular activities, and even started talking about their dreams for the future. Marcus, meanwhile, threw himself into his foundation. He worked tirelessly to ensure that Clara's hope would make a real difference in the lives of those it aimed to help. He partnered with local organizations, set up shelters and food banks, and created programs to provide job training and childcare for single parents. But despite his busy schedule, he always made time for Clara and her children. He visited them regularly, bringing gifts for the kids and offering Clara a listening ear whenever she needed it. Over time, their bond grew stronger, rooted in a shared history and a deep sense of mutual respect. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Clara's apartment, watching the sunset, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course," he said, turning to face her. "Why did you do all this?" she asked, her voice soft. "I mean, I know you're a good person, but this is so much more than anyone would expect." Marcus was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "When I saw you on the street that day, it shook me to my core," he said finally. "I couldn't believe that someone I once cared about so deeply had fallen so far. And I realized that if it could happen to you, it could happen to anyone. I wanted to do something, not just for you, but for all the people out there who are struggling and feel like no one cares." Clara nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "You've always had a big heart, Marcus. Even back in high school, you were always looking out for others." He smiled, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. "I guess some things never change." As the weeks turned into months, Clara's hope continued to grow, touching the lives of countless families across the city. Marcus became a symbol of hope and compassion, his story inspiring others to give back and make a difference in their communities. For Clara, the journey was far from easy, but it was filled with moments of joy and triumph. She found a job at a local nonprofit, using her own experiences to help others in similar situations. Her children continued to thrive, their laughter and energy filling her life with purpose and happiness. And through it all, Marcus remained a constant presence in their lives. He wasn't just a benefactor or a friend, he was family. One evening, as they gathered for dinner at Clara's apartment, Marcus looked around the table at the smiling faces of Clara and her children. He felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known in years. "You've come so far," he said, his voice filled with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Clara." She smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Marcus. You gave us a second chance, and I'll never forget that." As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Marcus realized that this was what truly mattered. Not the money, not the success, but the connections he had made and the lives he had touched. And in that moment, he knew that his journey was far from over. There were still so many people out there who needed help, so many stories waiting to be rewritten. But for now, he was content to sit with Clara and her children, savoring the simple joy of being together. Because sometimes, the most profound transformations began with a single act of kindness. And sometimes, they led to something even greater, a life filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities.